So I'd like to welcome you guys. I'm going to give it over to the students in just a second, but my job is really to set the tone and reminders about protocol for the audience, things like that. Okay? We have some ASP Talk members of our student community today that have been working a long time on this talk, and we really need to be good audience members and support them because this is not an easy thing to do at all. Up here, on this circle, in the spotlight, on the stage in front of your peers. So we really need you to be respectful and understand that this is a big ask for these students, and the topics that you hear today are going to be super interesting. So please be good audience members, and I'd like to introduce Felix, Gabrielle, and Clara, who will give a good introduction to our event today. And these students did an ASP talk last year, and they are part of the organizing committee. So you guys are up.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. We're thrilled to welcome you to this year's ASP Talk. It's an event about sharing ideas that challenge perspectives, spark curiosity, and inspire change.
Last year, as Ms. Pierce said, we had the honor of presenting these talks, and now we are thrilled to hand over the torch to a new group of incredible speakers. Each of them have spent weeks refining their ideas, crafting their narratives, and practicing their delivery, all to share topics that matter deeply to them.
Now, without further ado, please welcome Fiona Pasulo to talk about extremism and social media.
We all remember September 2023. We were all panicked over bedbugs. Videos flooded my social media showing the infested metro seats, hotel rooms, and even cinemas. People stopped taking public transport, schools shut down, hotels lost business, and the fear spread across Europe, especially with the Paris Olympics coming up. But here's something you may not remember. Many of these videos didn't even come from Paris. In fact, French intelligence later suggested that Russian disinformation campaigns helped fuel the hysteria, using social media algorithms to spread fear and division. Facebook acknowledged that 146 million users were exposed to Russian disinformation in 2016 alone. If we are susceptible to such trivial things on social media, which none of us, despite living here, questioned, imagine what other, more cynical ways social media can use our data against us. So how can countries like Russia amplify this hoaxes so successfully, and why is it actually beneficial for social media companies? Social media companies don't make money when you feel informed, they make money when you stay engaged. That's why platforms like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube use complex algorithms designed to keep you scrolling. Shocking, emotional, and oftentimes exaggerated posts do better than ones which tell you the truth. They track your likes, comments, watch time, and even how long you hover over a post. With the advancement of AI, these algorithms can fluctuate like never before. As we move away from traditional media, we leave behind fact-checking, bias control, and a platform where multiple diverse perspectives are valued. As we move into this new age, we explore new forms of freedom of speech, application of radical thought, and interaction like never before, but at what cost? Think of its effects like a playlist. At first, algorithms play songs based on your taste, curating a mix of songs based on the ones you picked and ones recommended to you based on artists you like. But over time, it stops including your initial songs. Instead, it keeps feeding you songs based off of those recommendations, and later ones based off of those recommendations. Before you know it, your entire music taste is based by the algorithm, and it is completely different from your initial taste. Social media works the same way. At first, it reflects your personality, but eventually it molds your personality, shaping your beliefs, emotions, and even your identity. It creates echo chambers where only what you've already heard is shown to you, creating confirmation bias, allowing you to fall deeper and deeper into extremist thought. With every scroll, you give social media the permission to define who you are. QAnon, a political extremist group that believes the US government is controlled by a secret network of elites, is a prime example. A 2021 MIT study found that Facebook groups promoting QAnon grew by 581% in just 4 months in 2020, due largely to algorithm-driven suggestions. X also played a role in this, as as the platform had tens of thousands of QAnon linked accounts, some gaining hundreds of thousands of followers through algorithmic amplification. What starts as a casual interest in conspiracy theories can quickly spiral into full-blown radicalization as social media platforms push users towards increasingly extreme content to keep them engaged. Most members of QAnon start out as normal people, but they can quickly be swept into a rabbit hole without their knowledge. So if you think this doesn't apply to you, neither did any of these QAnon members. Think about it. When was the last time you saw content which truly challenged your beliefs? When was the last time that you actively sought out opposing perspectives? If the answer is not often, then you're living the algorithm's version of reality, not your own. This power becomes especially problematic when certain individuals own these platforms. X is especially known to be hostile towards women. The post being so bad and using such foul language I can't show them here. These tweets aren't just coming from men. In fact, the algorithm found that 50% of misogynistic tweets came from women. Just one example of the cognitive dissonance found on social media. And of the 1.46 million tweets studied, 33% were deemed to be posted with an aggressive intent. A study from NBC found that at least 150 openly pro-Nazi paid premium accounts were active, and their posts with Nazi-related imagery amounted to 4.5 million views in March 2024 alone. 12,000 accounts linked to anti-Semitic, violent, sexist, and racist activity were unbanned in 2022. This allows harmful content to fly under the radar, which has unforeseen detrimental effects. These harmful posts can become so normalized in the social media echo chambers, they start to become normalized outside of the social media echo chambers, and they can have extreme real-world implications. When profits are put before human rights, there can be dire consequences. In 2017, a misinformation and hate speech campaign against the Rohingya Muslim minority in Myanmar created a violent division. The platform's algorithm prioritized inflammatory posts, many of which falsely accused the Rohingya of crimes and painted them as a threat. This fueled real-world violence, leading to massacres, mass displacement, and which would unfortunately ultimately lead to a genocide, with 43,000 Rohingya being killed. Facebook itself later admitted that it had failed to prevent the platform from being used to incite violence. And this isn't just a singular incident. Facebook, as of January 2025, has actually entirely removed their crucial fact-checking program. This is a chilling reminder that social media isn't just shaping opinions, it's shaping life and death realities. And taking and manipulating our data is a human rights violation. But why is your data so valuable? Because data is power. That's why tech companies are some of the richest in the world. Because your data is more valuable than oil. Elon Musk at $307 billion, Jeff Bezos at $218 billion, Mark Zuckerberg at $214 billion, Larry Ellison at $165 billion, Bill Gates at $161 billion, and what do they all have in common other than race and gender? They all can attribute their net worth to the monetization of data. Data isn't just used to keep you engaged. It's sold to advertisers, political campaigns, and even governments. The more the platforms know about you, the easier it is to manipulate you. A prime example of this is the Cambridge Analytica scandal. The political consulting firm harvested data from 87 million Facebook users without their consent, using this to create detailed psychological profiles. The profiles allowed them to micro-target people who could be possibly swung in elections, and they blasted them with propaganda to sway their elections, like the 2016 U.S. presidential race and the Brexit campaign. This wasn't just about advertising. It was psychological manipulation on a massive scale, shaping opinions without people even realizing it. Right now, we are all subject to inadvertent influence, and the point is you don't realize it, so you don't. When your information is weaponized without your knowledge, democracy itself is at risk. As long as your data remains unchecked, the power to control elections lies not within the people, but with whoever holds the most information. However, there is hope. There are suggestions to tax data farming so companies can have to be more conscientious of the data they collect, thus granting them less power. Algorithms are just shaping what we watch. They're shaping our beliefs, who we vote for, and ultimately our society as a whole. The rise of extremism isn't by coincidence. It's directly fueled by social media, designed to turn a profit by engaging our emotions. Social media was something that was meant to connect us, but now it's dividing us. It's up to us to not allow social media to rip us apart. And I'm not going to be hypocritical and tell you to get off social media. Social media can return to its original purpose, connection. So instead, I encourage you to fact check, outsource, and most importantly, have real, sometimes uncomfortable conversations from all perspectives.
So now we're going to welcome Bryce Greenwald to talk about prejudice and biases.
Hello. 95% of us are driven by unconscious prejudices in our daily decisions, shaping everything from perceptions to choices and interactions, often without us even realizing it. My name is Bryce, and I'm a junior at ASP. Today, I'll be discussing something that continues to shape our world in both ways, explicit and insidious, prejudice. My aim here is not just to point out the problems that we all face, but to help us break free of these invisible forces. I want to have a show of hands who thinks they suffer or they fall victim to these biases. The inspiration for my talk today stems from the previous TEDx speakers, the current political climate, and my AP psychology teacher, Mr. Beatty. I'd like to clarify that the topic I'll be discussing today is sensitive and naturally I'm not here to sound blame. I understand as a white male that a message of racial bias can be seen as boastful, yet it needs to be said. My goal is to propose more actionable things that can, as a community, we can foster to become more inclusive. First, I want to introduce a study by Steele and Anderson in 1995 at Stanford University, which examined the self-perpetuating nature of stereotype threats. The study divided participants into two groups, black and white students. The only difference was the framing of one test. One was set to measurability, while the other was described as assessing intelligence. To clarify, all students being tested were accepted to Stanford and were academically incredibly competitive. Thus, there was no discrepancy in the class. The results were striking. Black students performed worse on the test that was said to be measuring ability, while white students performed both equally as well on both tests. This phenomenon highlights how internalized fears of killing, negative stereotypes can diminish performance, much like how women have historically been underestimated in sciences and how athletes have often been misinterpreted or mislabeled to be intellectually inferior. Steele and Anderson showed us that these stereotype threats can cause us to act differently in circumstances we didn't know we had any mental capacity to manipulate. Yet, the Gall test shows us how young these prejudices can take place. The Gall test in 1947 is another famous study attempting to identify prejudice specifically in adolescents and aims to explore the effects of racial segregation on black children regarding their self-perception. 253 children aged 3 to 7 participated and were divided into corresponding age groups. Children were shown 4 adults with identical dementia. The only difference was the race. They were asked which doll looked the best or which doll had the nicest skin color. They found that even black children, being a majority of them, all agreed individually that the lighter skinned dolls looked better than those with darker skin. Results indicated an internalization of societal racial bias. In fact, the study was so influential that it had a pivotal role in the development of the Brown-Richard Board of Education case. Now, what do these psychology studies teach us as members of the ASP community and beyond? It teaches us that these biases are harmful, and we should break free of the cycle of letting unconscious prejudices dictate our lives and empower ourselves to be authentic rather than trying to be someone who we're not. While the two studies I have cited focus on anti-black and racism, these findings extend beyond the African American community. Going forward, I believe we need to implement these three steps. Start with reducing internalized bias through representation. Psychological studies demonstrate that racial prejudice is absorbed at an early age, often before children can even articulate it. So how can our school actively work to dismantle these biases? One solution is ensuring that educational materials feature a diverse representation. Consider the books we read in elementary school. If a curriculum audit reveals a lack of minority groups in textbooks and media, like African Americans or LGBTQIA plus members, changes must be made. Incorporating a wide range of historical and contemporary figures from a diverse background, not just in STEM but in fictional, literature, and politics, sends a powerful message that race is not a determining factor of self-worth. Difficult conversations about race and identity should start at an early age, and inclusivity should become an intrinsic part of a child's development rather than an uncomfortable discussion later on in life. In fact, ASP has already started these steps, shaping the lives of students, but more needs to be done. Yet, more can be done even beyond the ASP community. Public libraries or media should include a variety of minority groups to ensure inclusivity and dismantle internalized bias. The DALT test showed us the consequences of early exposure to racial prejudice. Prioritizing intervention at this stage can profoundly shape future generations, fostering unity rather than division. Another idea is bias-aware learning environments. In academic settings, psychologists have found students participating in unconscious, bias-influenced self-perception. Students who feel isolated may disengage or underperform in academic achievement. Well, this can be caused by isolation due to stereotypes or lack of representation. Schools and universities implementing yearly fun and engaging implicit bias training would ensure measurable changes into the perception and inclusivity. To encourage participation, schools could offer prizes to those who made the most progress, or create known programs similar to that of the Honor Student program to encourage students to get involved with workshops, making them more desirable candidates for future applications for school and jobs. Understanding unconscious biases would drastically change our community, changing everyone's assumptions more often and creating a far more inclusive and fair academic environment. Finally, implementing a growth mindset rather than prioritizing high-stakes testing. We must emphasize the learning process as both students and professors. We get caught up in our grades far too often and forget about the progress we have made as individuals in all aspects of school, whether that's social, academic, or professional. Who here thinks that more often than not, grades are in school? Yes. Okay. We as a community must understand that there is another value to learning that doesn't revolve around tests. Learning helps us think critically and develop our identity. Obtaining a growth mindset rather than seeing school as grade-based can help us feel more confident as students and about our work, and thus encourage us to engage more in learning and believe in ourselves. Now, how does psychology teach us this, especially when all the examples I gave were racially specific? Take this field and error two sides. Institutions may be encouraged to rethink merit-based systems that have been shown to reinforce racial stereotypes disproportionately. After testing, it's clear that stereotypes will lower testing performance, so rethinking merit-based systems will allow students to express what differs from tests and things that have to offer. In addition, changing how we view what our professors ask us as students will ultimately increase skill building, which education is said to emphasize over high-stakes testing. Still, if there is one thing that we took away from what I've said here today, is that society, history, and even our own experiences have caused us to be so hyper-focused on our self-perception that sometimes we forget to think critically about our subjects, even our fall victims of it. But once we become aware of it, there's only one question that comes from us. We allow these hidden forces to dictate our decisions, or to be challenged and questioned on continuing to doing better. An inclusive society isn't built by simple words, but it starts with something as easy as awareness and the courage to see beyond our inherited past. Thank you.
Okay. Next, please give us a round of applause for Sarah Kabosh.
Imagine waking up every single day as the exact same person. Never changing, never evolving, never growing. Just a frozen version of yourself while the world slowly moves on without you. Terrifying, right? Growing up, my grandma used to tell me this Arabic proverb, Men lem dead, dead. Now what this basically means is he who does not change himself loses himself. Now as you can imagine, as an 8-year-old hearing this, I just smiled and nodded, pretending to understand. But as I got older, it started to make more sense. Because when we think of identity, we often see it as something fixed, which is why advice like just be yourself sounds comforting, because it suggests that we are already complete and that we don't need to change. But if identity is fixed, then why do we outgrow certain opinions, certain habits, and certain friendships? This proverb challenges the idea that we are meant to stay the same. Instead, it suggests that we must constantly renew ourselves, and that if we don't grow, then we lose ourselves. But what does that mean? It means that you become trapped in an outdated version of who you once were, even when that version of yourself might no longer fit. It means you hold on to habits or beliefs just because they feel familiar. Now, I would like everyone here to raise your hand if you are 100% confident in who you are with no doubts at all. That's my little sister Lena raising her hand, and I know she's confident, but most people aren't, and that's totally okay. Because the reality of things is, we are constantly changing. I'm sure many of you have looked through old yearbooks and thought, why did I wear that? Or you got sent old videos from the group chat and you thought, why did I say that? Or why did I do that? That's proof of change. And it happens whether we like it or not. In fact, a study has shown that your five most defining personality traits are likely to change within the next 6 years. And if who we are changes so frequently, then why do we cling to this idea of just being ourselves as if ourselves is already found and already complete? Would it make more sense to focus on who we are becoming rather than who we are being? Now, I would like you guys to take this idea a step further, because change isn't just psychological, it's biological. Have you ever heard of neuroplasticity? The ability of the brain to make connections and reorganize itself as a reaction to new experiences or information. So every time you learn a new skill, break an old habit, or challenge your way of thinking, your brain literally rewires itself. Now that's how Cambridge explains it. But I think my version will be a little bit easier to understand. I like to think of it as a Spotify algorithm. If you keep listening to Drake, Spotify assumes that's all you like. But the moment you explore new artists, the recommendations expand. Identity kind of works the same way. If you keep repeating the same habits, surrounding yourself with the same people, and telling yourself the same exact stories about who you are, then you stay stuck. But the moment you try something new, that's when you really grow. It's ironic, isn't it? But it's by not being yourself that you really start to find yourself. Again, I would like everyone here to raise your hand if you've ever taken a personality test. Great, pretty sure that's everyone. Maybe it was the personality test they made us take in middle school before Outward Bound, or an Enneagram quiz, or a BuzzFeed quiz about which prison break character are you. Either way, these tests are fun and they're relatable. They give us labels that make us feel understood. Like now you're casually saying, well, I'm an INFJ, and that's why I'm emotionally unavailable. Or I'm an ENFP, and that's why I have emotional breakdowns every Tuesday afternoon. But instead of treating personality tests as lifelong labels, we should see them as snapshots of who we are at a moment in time, and not a permanent definition of who we will always be. So now that we've established that our personality changes, that our brains are designed to adapt, and that personality tests are temporary, snapshots of who we are at a given moment in time, then why do we act like identity is a label we have to wear forever, instead of something that will grow and that will evolve? Maybe it's because we don't actually live in a world that wants us to change. We live in a world that is built to reward conformity. A study has shown that applicants with names suggesting they were white got 50% more callbacks than those whose names suggesting they were black. So I would like you to imagine two applicants, John Smith and Mohammed Hassan. Now faced with such bias, 20% of them will change their names. Not because they are proud of their heritage, not because they're underqualified, but because they know that being themselves might cost them an amazing opportunity. This, right here, highlights a contradiction in our society. Because while we pretend to advocate for authenticity, its biases penalize people for being their true self. And that's when this advice becomes paradoxical. Because this pressure to conform is everywhere. It's not just with job applicants. It's in social media, where we feel pressure to conform and curate this idealized version of ourselves, which often masks our true selves. It's in school, where we have this pressure to conform, to be cool, to be popular. And it's in friend group norms, where every time you step out of your comfort zone, someone says, wow, you've changed, pressuring you to be the same static person you've always been. But in a world where conformity over individuality is preferred, the advice of being yourself feels more like a contradiction. Because when people say, be yourself, what they really mean is be yourself, but only if that version of you is societally acceptable. In my 15 years of existence, I've been to 8 different schools. I've pretty much mastered the art of adapting. And let's say by my 6th school, I had my role. Not the quietest, not the loudest, but I had it. And I figured I would keep it, because that's how identity works, right? You find it and then let it define you for the rest of your life. Well, that's what I thought. But this need to start over has led to me experiencing being different. And if I had clung to the same version of myself at each of those schools, I would have missed out on the people and experiences that have shaped who I am today. A notable moment was my transition from the French to the American system. I was talking more, participating in class, and maybe taking up space in a way that I wouldn't have before. And then someone said, I like how outgoing you are. And I stopped for a second, because no one had really described me that way. And then it hit me. Maybe I wasn't a certain type of person, but just used to acting a certain way. You stop growing and you stop improving. Not because you can't, but because you've convinced yourself you're not the type of person who can. I'm sure we all have a subject where we struggle in school. For me, it was math, because I wasn't naturally good at it, and probably had some trauma from my dad explaining fractions to me at the kitchen counter. But either way, instead of saying I need to practice more, I started saying I'm not a math person. And from that moment on, it wasn't even the subject that was hard, it was that I had stopped trying to get better. And this mindset works in many different scenarios. If you say, I'm not a leader, then you never step up. If you say, I'm not good at languages, then you avoid moments where you can be good at languages. And the issue here is once you define yourself a certain way, then you let it define it yourself for the rest of your life. And so guess what happens? You stay exactly the same. And that's why just be yourself can be bad advice. Because sometimes the self you've been clinging on to for far too long is just a story you've been telling yourself for far too long. So the solution here is simple. One word makes all the difference. Instead of being, focus on becoming. But to do that, one has to understand what the authentic self is. The authentic self isn't about refusing to grow. It's about being honest with yourself about who you are now while being open to who you can become. Because your true self isn't fixed. If I had asked any of you guys to describe your authentic self 4 years ago, would it look anything like who you are now? Probably not. And 5 years from now, it'll change again. Because growth is what makes you authentic. And the moment your mindset shifts from being to becoming, that's when you stop saying things like, well, that's just who I am. And you start saying things like, what skills do I want to develop? What person do I want to grow into? You stop using this is just who I am as an excuse, and you start becoming who you want to be. And another solution to this is to try stuff that feels not you. You don't have to be good at it, you just have to try. Scary? Maybe. But possible? Absolutely. If you say, I'm not a public speaker, take a debate class. I'm not creative, take an art class. Because sometimes the only reason you think something isn't you is because you never actually tried it. It's ironic, isn't it? But sometimes the only thing holding you back from becoming the best version of yourself is you. And when you start thinking of yourself as a work in progress, you stop holding on to an old identity that might be keeping you stuck. I would like everyone here to imagine your future self. Are they the same as they are today, still making the same choices, having the same habits, or stuck in the same patterns? Or are they someone who took risks, embraced change, and became more than they ever thought they could be? Bad news is, you probably don't know that. But good news is, that choice is all yours. And if you're sitting here thinking, nah, future me is going to be exactly the same, then congratulations, because you just took my course. Because here's the truth. Being yourself is comfortable, but becoming yourself is powerful. Being yourself is advice we've all heard. whether on a first day of school, a job interview, or even a first date. But what if it's the very thing holding us back? I like to think of identity as an equation. The constant being your values, the core of who you are, and your variable being the things that change over time, your mindset, your experiences, your habits. But the problem is, when we treat identity as only a constant, we refuse to let a variable do its job. And an equation without a variable, it does not evolve, it stays the same. And the reality of who you are today is just one version of yourself, a product of the experiences that have shaped you. And for far too long, identity has been treated as something fixed. But just like education shifted 30 years ago to approach a growth mindset, I would like us to do the same with identity. We need to stop seeing it as static. We should start seeing it as dynamic, something to be explored, refined, and redefined. Now, more than ever, in 2025, identity is heavily politicized, debated, and dissected in the public eye. But this isn't a crisis, it's an opportunity. Because if we just shift our perspective, we can see the potential for a world that doesn't just tolerate evolution, but celebrates it. A world where growth is not just accepted, but expected. Because we are shaping the world every time we shape ourselves. So please, don't just be yourself, become yourself. Because the future is waiting. And it starts right now, right here, with us. Thank you.
All right, now let's welcome Anna Van Acker to the stage.
Okay, so before I start my talk, I'd like to have a show of hands of if you've ever been lonely or felt like no one understands you. Okay, that's a good majority. So, generals in the United States also investigate loneliness. They do this because the United States has been suffering of a loneliness epidemic. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek H. Murthy said that people feel invisible, but they never use the word lonely to describe it. COVID-19 has also had an impact on loneliness because you lost connections with relatives and loved ones due to the confinement. It doesn't only impact your relations with people, it also gives you a higher risk of strokes, dementia, depression, and premature death. And Murphy compares it to smoking 15 cigarettes every day. Therefore, loneliness is also now being named the new smoking. So what is the cure to this epidemic? Community. So our modern understanding of community mostly comes from an experiment that was done in the 50s or 60s. It showed the effect of community through addiction. Simon Sinek explains this experiment, and he said that they put a rat alone in a cage and they gave it two waters, one that was laced with drugs and one that was plain. They saw that the rat, alone in a cage, tried both waters and ended up getting addicted to the water with the drugs. Therefore it died and got it. Yeah. So rats, like humans, are social animals. Therefore Bruce Alexander said that this wasn't a fair test. And he said that they should do it again, but this time with more rats. So they put more rats in a cage with labyrinths and wheels, and they put two waters again, one laced with drugs and one plain. Now they saw that all the rats tried both, but kept drinking the plain water. And the only explanation to this is because they had a community there to support them and keep them away from the things that harm us mentally and physically. So Simon Sinek also talks about friendship. He says that we don't build trust by offering help, we build trust by asking for it. This is important to a community because in a community there's a group of people and you need a basic level of trust and friendship to be able to help them when they need it. So you don't obviously have to be best friends with the people, but a basic level of trust is needed to build and grow a community. One of the ways that I've personally experienced a community is in the Walk of the World, or the Nijmeegse Vierdaagse. It's an event in the Netherlands where you walk a certain distance for 4 days in a row, either 30, 40, or 50 kilometers a day. So you're probably thinking, why on earth would you do this if not for charity? And well, community is the answer you'll get from most people walking. So there's 45,000 different people that walk this event every single year from over 70 different countries in the world, including militaries, firemen, policemen, and a wide range of ages too. There's kids that are 12 years old, 11 years old, and people that are in their 80s, because you can walk this till the day that you aren't physically capable of it anymore. So obviously everyone trains, because I can tell you 160 kilometers with no training is physically impossible. And so everyone trains. There's probably someone in the United States right now walking and tracking their kilometers, maybe even someone in Australia. Everyone comes in this 1 week in July just so that they can do this together with their own backstory. So I'm going to be walking it for the 4th time this year, but instead of doing the 30 like I've done for the past 3 times, I'm going to be doing the 40. It's going to be painful, but I'll get to meet new people, see new places, and just learn so many new things that I'll just have new experiences that will be able to bring me and help me forever. So people in the walk, they give you their seats, they give you your sandwiches, they give you their painkillers, and even some wool to decrease the pressure on your feet if you really need it. On the walk itself, you talk to people around you, because there's so many people, you're never a second alone. And I was walking, and there were people, and they were next to me, and they were talking, and at some point, we were seeing the next 10 kilometers together with all these strangers and no background music. I feel bad for the public. People are also wearing matching outfits, like you can see on the picture with me and my family. You wear matching outfits, but it's not only you and your family as in that community that's walking it together. It can also be that someone else is wearing the exact same shirt, and then all of a sudden you're also with them in the same group. So it just increases the community and everyone knows how it feels and everyone will continue together. So not only are there people on the walk that are there to support you, there's also people on the side who will always give you soup, candy, cucumbers, carrots, chips, literally anything you can find in their pantry, they'll give it to you. People are there at a different location every single day because we don't walk the same circle. And there's bands, families, college students who party through the entire night and then stay up that extra 3 hours just to see you start at 8 a.m. There's 2 anchor points that are really important though that I've noticed, and I know some people around me on the walk have noticed. The first one is the disco boy. It's the guy who stands in an astronaut suit with a music box, and he's always there cheering you up with a lot of energy. And he's dancing, laughing, he makes everyone dance, sing, and laugh. If you're really in trouble, he'll let you recommend a song, and you can stand there and he'll help you out. The second one is a larger group of people, which are all the little kids. Lower school kids that are standing next to the side and will give you high fives when you need it. And they say, I'm going to do this when I'm 12. You'll see me walking too. And that was me when I was younger. And they're always there to encourage you. Some of them even walk with you for a while if they want to. So I asked myself, why do people do this? Because the pain is annoying. So why would you press that sign up button in February? And most of the people say, last year I told myself I would never do it again, and here I am, again. People have walked 25 times and they say this. So I think community isn't only described by wanting to help each other, but it's also having a common goal, because you want to get to that finish line together, because walking there alone is boring. So this sense of community does not only help the average citizen, but it also helps large freedom fighters get through their tough days. Nelson Mandela, in his autobiography, A Long Walk to Freedom, says that when he moved to Johannesburg for work, he moved into an African township called Alexandria. Alexandria is a place where he lived for a short amount of time before moving to Orlando. But he says that even though he didn't live there for a long time, it will always be his home and the community he will return to. Because even though he was having issues fighting for freedom for his people, he always knew that there was someone there to help if he needed it. So the sense of community has an effect on world-changing leaders, but it also has an effect on us, high school students in here. So could I have a show of hands of how many people were scared on their first day of school or on orientation day? Yeah, okay. I was very nervous on orientation day. I came in, I had no clue what to do, and we were given a lot of information and also some tests. And so after orientation day, my dad asked me, so, are you excited for school? And I said, Dad, I'm scared. What am I doing? And he was like, you'll be fine. You'll find your footing sometime soon. And I was like, okay. So I walked in on day 1, got my schedule because I remembered where I had to get that. And I stood there. I looked at my schedule and I I going? What am I supposed to do and why am I here? And so I was standing there next to the table and I was very confused. And then a group of people came up to me and they're like, okay, so we'll show you around. And they gave me the courage to start talking to people, to show why I was there, why I'd come here. And so they encouraged me to find my people, the people that I could hang out with, and the people who would be there for me. And so now, 6 months later, I've asked my friends, why'd you go to the ASP? Like, what do you like about it except school? But, I don't know. And they said, it encourages me to find my people, like that one person that you can bond with. And it also encourages you to spend time outside of the usual 9 to 3:30 hours with your friends. Like, hang out and do something together, like doing homework or playing football. ASB doesn't only encourage growing your community, it also encourages sports, theater, and after-school clubs. So I was recently in the Percy Jackson play, which was on this stage about a month ago. We had a very short production period from the start of January to mid-February, and we always helped each other out with cues, exits, notes, props when we lost them, and everyone always wanted to help. If you needed help, you could ask, and they would listen and we would follow their requests. So I sometimes still see the cast around school, and I'll say hi and ask how it's going. Since the production period was so short, we got very close together very quickly, but now all of a sudden everyone's gone back to their normal lives. Everyone's like ran away like a group of fish. When they get scared, they go in every direction. So even though we aren't a tight-knit group anymore, we will still be there for each other when we need it, because that's what a community does. So for all these reasons, community can have an effect on some high school freshmen and seniors, but it can also have an effect on world-changing leaders. From living in the same place to having the same ambitions, wherever you go, whatever you decide to do, there will always be a community there for you, and that will always pull you through the hard times and celebrate all your good achievements. So go out and enjoy life and take the opportunities you get, because maybe it's only once in a lifetime and there will always be people helping you. And maybe you'll even learn something new about yourself. You might even choose to walk with me sometime soon. I always like a new companion.
And now for the final talk, please welcome Claire Parvardis to talk about Wonder.
In the time that it takes me to say this sentence, a few hundred seconds of our day have already passed. And by this time the talk ends, over 1,000 seconds will be gone and never to return. One day is 86,400 seconds. Let that sink in. A large number, yet we go by each of these seconds like a blink of an eye, like the sunset going to sunrise time lapse. We do not realize this because we just wake up and we go on with our day. Just picture this image and just think about it for a few seconds. You don't have to say anything. If you want to mention something, go ahead. But what do you see and what do you think? Again, you may not have a lot to say because you don't know the meaning to it, but you still think about it. But for me, I wonder a lot about this image because I made it myself. I went through a lot of process and thoughts when making this because I was cherishing moments from my summer when I was volunteering. I associate wonder with the idea of awe and possibility. This wonder tends to slip away as we grow older and become more accustomed to the real world around us. So, number one is familiarity. We continue to experience more and more of life, but when awe-inspiring things become a commonplace routine, thus diminishing our sense of wonder. Our cognitive processing, all of our brains, are wired to adapt to new experiences, which leads us to decrease in the intensity of wonder over time. Our cultural influences, modern society, just like ours that we're in right now, our fast-paced nature and constant exposure to information can make it complicated and challenging to pause and appreciate the extraordinary in the ordinary. And lastly, there's personal perspective. The ability to experience life does not indeed vary from person to person, as some individuals are more predisposed to maintaining a sense of awe throughout their lives. To clarify, I'm not saying that the loss of wonder is necessarily negative. What I want to render attention to is the process of how we nowadays wonder less, and therefore our actual moments of wonder are more impactful in those small amounts of time. So, to cultivate a sense of wonder also requires an effort and a willingness to approach the world with curiosity and openness. The elusive sense of wonder reflects the complex nature of human perception and experience. By recognizing its elusiveness, we may become more approachable to trying new things and allowing us to fully appreciate and cherish these fleeting yet profound experiences. And these moments, perhaps for us, are celebrations, a moment that just makes you pause and say things. And now let me ask you something. When was the last time you truly paused? A good friend of mine told me recently how they noticed how we live our lives so passively, how it disgusts them that we just live our lives through social media. We only focus on ourselves and we no longer think about the consequences and our actions and how it affects people around us. They mentioned about infatuation and the observation that they have made about people around each other and the interactions that we behave as a community within each other. To set this into mind, the next time you walk around, just allow yourself to be dazed by your surroundings. We all know our generation has become so materialistic that our actions are purposely done to only benefit ourselves. How come? We are time-starved and our community has been brought into this culture. And I'm saying this for all of us, myself included. Our wonder has become superficial. We wonder about what the shoe brand was of the guy that you saw walking past in the hallway the other day, the website where you can find the prom dress you saw on TikTok, or if I can get an A on my math test, and how much would my overall grade change. We are so selfishly entranced in our own lives that we do not stop to wonder how we may be impacting others around us. We are living this vicious cycle, and it keeps going and on in loop, and quite frankly, I would like to leave this loop. What does it feel like to lose wonder? What happens when you lose wonder? We don't realize this, we don't notice this, because we passively experience our lives rather than actively generating it. And as humans, we have lost this sense of wonder. We have lost a sense of wonder by living in constant survival or productivity mode, and this diminishes our ability to be empathetic and to cherish and embrace our curiosity. Take, for instance, a kaleidoscope. As kids, it was an entertainment. It made us think, how can a small toy change patterns and colors? And we're just sitting there, moving around and around this one little telescope. However, rather than just sitting in our thoughts and ruminating, we have come to a time where we have moved towards relying on our phones and Googling for answers and keen to find out the scientific and rational explanation. Evidently now, our sense of wonder has diminished as we know how a kaleidoscope works. You will start looking at it differently, and it doesn't shock you anymore when you look at it. So as you can see here, a kaleidoscope works on the principle of multiple reflections and sunlight. The mirror reflects the images of objects inside, creating a symmetrical pattern. Knowing the scientific removes the knowledge, I want to bring in the brain. So the brain has the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. The right hemisphere is known for the emotional, the creativity, the novelty of the mind. And left hemisphere is the scientific reasoning, the oriental and rational thinking, and categorizing and organizing all the information that you receive every single day. So this leads to our mind and how it functions. But how do we relate two hemispheres back to wonder? Wonder requires a balance between the two hemispheres. As I mentioned before, the right hemisphere functions for the novelty and emotional resonance, and it works together with the left hemisphere, the cognitive drive to rationalize. This interplay that creates a state of consciousness where we are both emotionally moved and intellectually engaged. An example of this for you all to ponder on is when the next time you encounter or observe the next natural phenomenon, this could be a solar eclipse or 2-meter tall waves, or even just a view that will unite the right hemisphere to process the beauty and the emotional impact. But these two together, you actually think about where they're intertwined with emotional impact and the left hemisphere, and they work to understand the scientific explanation as to how a wave can grow so tall, and as well what creates a solar eclipse, but you're still moved by the beauty of both. This is the beauty of humans in our minds, our controlled hallucinations. We have so many atoms in neurons and chemical balances going at lightning fast speeds that everything only lasts seconds for us. Just like the fact that only one day is 86,400 seconds, and we don't even realize it. I'd like to introduce a neuroscientist in Joseph. His theory on consciousness and his concept control hallucination connect to the idea of losing our sense of wonder. But how? By reframing how we perceive reality. Seth argues that our experience of reality is not a direct reflection of the external world around us, but rather it's a predictive model constructed by our brain. It's a routine that we go through every single day. This predictive nature that we have leads us to diminishing sense of wonder, because this model becomes increasingly more adapted to the familiarity, and our brain becomes more adapted to predicting this. Thus, our experiences, once so extraordinary, may lose their impact. Again, this is how our society has come to efficiency over novelty. And this connects back to my point from before. The Seth's theory that our perception is a controlled hallucination generated by our predictive brain. And as I know Seth quoted, somehow within each of our brains, the combined activity of many tens of billions of neurons, each one on a tiny biological machine, is giving rise to a conscious experience. But it's not just any conscious experience, it's your conscious experience. And how does it relate back to us? This predictive mechanism is efficient for survival, but can also limit our capacity for knowledge and awe. If it becomes overly reliant on a familiar pattern and template, we, as people with our routines every single day, we're stuck in our left hemisphere, constructing routine. Like us, we have been following this routine, waking up, eating breakfast, go to school, sit for 1 hour and 20 minutes for 4 classes, writing notes or staring at the slides for presentation. Extracurricular, you go home, dinner, and bed. And obviously, it might be different for each and one of us because we're all different, but this has been invested into our lives for the past 12 years, and that we have overly entrained this muscle of our left hemisphere. And so what I'm trying to say is that this is how I imagine our left hemisphere works. Our left brain pays sharp attention to detail and sorts and organizes people into things into neat, orderly categories. Our mind has been so concentrated on this race of success that we have begun to categorize people or our surroundings, and that we are starting to forget that we are all humans living our first time. Wonder helps us understand with empathy and curiosity. And to set this to mind, imagine when you see that one kid in class that is always so quiet. Why is why is she so quiet? Or what caused that one teenager to have so much anger in them? So what I'm saying is that wonder is a choice. You always have the choice to wonder, just like you have a choice to do anything else. You have a choice to watch TikTok for 10 minutes every morning. You have a choice to actually sit back and just think. It could be anything. But as Seth says, we can restore that sense of wonder. As we learn to appreciate this complexity and the creativity of our brains in shaping out our own individual worlds, because we're all different, this perspective invites us to marvel and wonder at the very process of being conscious and alive. This will be insightful to enhance us to be more thoughtful and insightful with who we interact and what we interact with. Obviously, our society has implanted so many scientific and rational aspects that it does demystify some aspects of our experiences. However, this is how our society has come through. But we can always regain that sense of wonder, and the reduced stimulation of the right hemisphere may narrow down our perceptual diversity, but embracing these insights and consciousness can encourage us to actively cultivate awe-inspiring experiences. So, by recognizing this, our perceptions are susceptible and malleable, we can consciously seek experiences that disrupt our predictions and engage with the right hemisphere's capacity for creativity and emotional depth. How? Well, activities like art, music, mindfulness, if you're into that, if you want to do mindfulness, can stimulate the right brain and foster renewed appreciation. So, some ideas of how I would encourage this. Change your perspective. Try this. Walk a familiar route. It might not be the same route that you do every day to go back home, but pretend it's the first time you're seeing it. Notice the cracks on the floor, the rhythm of the bird song, the scent in the air. The curiosity isn't about finding new places, it's about seeing old places with new eyes. Ask more questions. Why do fireflies glow? How old is that tree? Why? What does the sky look like on the other side of the world right now? Wonder is not about knowing, it's about wanting to know.
Notice your hand. At the moment, underneath your skin, cells are multiplying, blood is circulating, tiny mechanisms are keeping you alive. Stuff you're never consciously thinking about because you have so many other issues that are superficially encountering us every single day. But they're happening second by second. Zoom in and you then pull back, thinking about the periphery of the Milky Way and seeing Earth. It's a small blue planet when all your life has been and continues to happen. Marvel resides in both points. It's between knowing both perspectives, both concepts of how and why we see things. Enjoy your first. The first time you've ever heard your favorite song. How did that feel? Raise your hand if the first time you heard your favorite song, you had a different sensation. Okay. And the first time you've ever looked at the ocean, like it's a calming and soothing sensation for you. You look at the ocean, you've been at school for like 6 months and you go to the beach. You feel safe, there's a sense of wonder there. The first time you've ever tried something new to eat, what would it be like to capture the feeling of a first more frequently? Experiment, master something new, eat something you don't know, view the world like you're experiencing it for the very first time. And lastly, be present in the in between moments. We occupy each time with distractions, waiting in line, walking to our car, even brushing our teeth with distraction. When was the last time that you've ever not gone on TikTok or on Instagram or checked a message while you're brushing your teeth or right before you go to the shower or go to bed? But what if we didn't? What if we just stood there and watched the world around us unfold? Wonder is not something we need to seek out. It's already there, waiting for us to pay attention. Thank you.
Thank you to our student presenters. You guys have been a really good audience, so first of all, thank you for being supportive of your classmates. This is a very difficult thing to do up here. This is the 3rd year we've run the ASP Talk event. We're really hoping to be able to continue this tradition. And so I want to name a couple people that were helpful with the organization of the event, and you can talk to them about potentially participating in it next year. Obviously, we have our 5 speakers. Let's give them one more round of applause. And it's amazing. I also want to thank some of our teachers who were very instrumental in helping to choose the candidates, help them write their scripts, presentation techniques, etc. So thank you to Mr. Sikoria, Ms. Rich, Ms. Answan, Mr. Rousseau, Ms. Ordelheid, and a special thank you to Ms. Crocker, who's been here most of the time with me. Okay, on the student side, it was a really nice experience to do this with students. I was helping to organize things, but I wasn't, I would say, the principal organizer. We had, of course, our speakers from last year, so Felix, Edith, Clara, and Gabrielle. And we also have Elsie and Arabelle, who helped on the sidelines as well. And we have Izzy Romer with the microphones, who did a great job, and I have no idea how to do this without you, so thank you. And Mr. Olivier in the booth up there with the lights. But yeah, thank you, Mr. Olivier. So what I do want to let you know is that we had a really short timeline. Students came to me and Ms. Maldonado in early February maybe and said, hey, can we do this ASP Talk? And we looked at the calendar. It's very difficult to find a time when the PAC is not being used in the spring before the seniors are gone. So we found this date by miracle, but it was a pretty quick turnaround. So the students came to us with their ideas. Then they had a couple weeks to figure out, okay, how am I going to run with this idea, write their script. They worked over the February vacation to come up with their scripts. They rehearsed last week. They rehearsed yesterday. We were here till 5:30, 6 o'clock, and they did a great job today. So this is not an impossible task, but it is something that was not done over months and months of time. So again, I think we've had a lot to think about after these presentations. Please congratulate when you see these students later today, and think about doing this next year as well. Have a great rest of your day. This will be recorded too, so if your classmates couldn't come, you can have them watch it recorded. Bye guys.